She is a professor at the University of Washington for the past 20 years, where she teaches about global issues, race, gender, identity, and equity. In addition, she's a speaker, facilitator, four-time member of Humanities Washington Speakers Bureau, and she's also received Seattle Weekly's Best of Seattle recognition, amongst so many other recognitions. And the book we're discussing today, Beyond Guilt Trips, Mindful Travel in an Unequal World, has so much recognition, including being on Oprah's list. Oprah, the best 26 travel books of all time, Voters Travels, 13 books to inspire your travels. And she's been all over the internet in all sorts of wonderful magazines and podcasts and publications. And we're so honored to have her here today. I could go on forever. I've had the honor of speaking with Dr. Anu at multiple occasions before, and I'm so excited for all of you to witness her brilliance and her wisdom today. So a couple of housekeeping things. I think you're all doing it. You're all muted. And we're going to open up later. We're going to open it up later for questions, where you can unmute yourself, ask Dr. Anu a question, or if you're not comfortable doing that, feel free to drop your question in the chat and just preface your question with the word question so that I could see it scrolling through the chat. And many of you have your video on. You're welcome to do so, even if you have not such a glamorous background, or like me and it's still kind of dark outside. You're welcome to do that. We love seeing your faces. And so just to give you all a layout of today, I'm going to ask Dr. Anu a couple of questions. And then we are going to open it up to you for questions. So, we'll about halfway through, we'll switch it over, but again, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. So I am so excited, Dr. Anu, thank you so much for being here. I have all the questions for you. I'm so excited to get started.
Thanks, Carmela. That's very sweet. Hi, everyone. Good day to all of you. I just really want to thank Erica for inviting me to participate and partner with the Nomadic Network in this way a couple months ago. This book has allowed me to meet all kinds of people that I'd never meet in my regular existence, and it's pretty spectacular. So thank you all for joining us today. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. And so there's so much meat and there's so much good stuff that we can talk about and dive. So I'm just going to start diving in. So in the book, Beyond Guilt Trips, you weave pieces of your own journey, both professionally and from a travel perspective. And so I was wondering if you could start us off by sharing more about what moved you to write this book.
Yeah, the very first line of my book is something like, if you write the book that you've never seen. And that's a quote from Miss Toni Morrison. And I took that really to heart several years ago, because this book that I have here is the book that was playing out in front of me all the time. These were the conversations I was having in my own mind with travelers, with students, with other educators, with well-intentioned people who aren't quite sure how to grapple with an unequal world. I didn't make the world unequal. You didn't make the world unequal. And here we are. And we've got all these feelings that are coming up, and so little opportunity to speak honestly, directly, compassionately, and with some vision about how to navigate this. And I hadn't seen anything like that. So I thought, let me just start writing some of these stories down, because my brain is exploding. I've got a lot in my head. So let me just start writing. And it took me some time to figure out that I was actually writing a book, that it would turn into this. The journey toward publication, I was telling Carmela last week, was not an easy one. This book was rejected 34 times. And 35th time it clicked. And in that journey, kind of thought, oh, maybe the conversation I'm trying to have is not the conversation that others are wanting to have. Obviously, if it's not getting picked up by a publisher, maybe that's what that means. And I didn't think that was actually true, because my experience didn't really click with that. And I just thought, everyone I'm interacting with is wanting to talk more about, how do you lead a thoughtful, intentional, mindful life within the minefield of our unequal world, whether you're far away or whether you're at home. That seemed to be the conversation that a lot of people were passionate to have. And I kept on wondering, how come publishers don't want this? I don't understand. But here it is, and here you are, and how nice that 35th publisher said yes. How nice.
I love it. And I feel like if it wasn't the 35th, it would have been the 36th, because as someone who has consumed your book and recommend it widely, and I was going to do this later, but I show people, like, I have all of my bookmarks, because it's like there's just so many things that I want to like remember and have handy. And so we're just grateful that it's out into the world and being able to influence so many lives. And so for those of you who haven't gotten a chance to read Dr. Anu's book yet, what I love the most is how it served as a guide to navigate, like Dr. Anu was just saying, how we handle these like complex emotions we experience, especially when being confronted by inequity. And it's such a helpful tool. I recommend it to everyone. And in it, you shared how having more conversations around these uncomfortable topics helps us to build capacity and stretch. It's like a muscle. And so what suggestions you have for us, especially as travel is still a little bit limited and many of us may not be at home and venturing out of our bubble yet, how can we practice how to handle these uncomfortable topics?
That's a big question.
Yeah, big question.
We need about 2 days for that question. So a couple of thoughts come up. You know, when we're trying to get more comfortable around uncomfortable topics, I think one of the first places to begin is to think, what makes uncomfortable topics uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
Why is race and identity and racism and homophobia and inequity and patriarchy and all the other ways that we divide and demean one another, why are those uncomfortable? What does that mean? I mean, these are systems, right? These are systems. Again, I didn't create it, you didn't create it. And yet, why are we uncomfortable with it, right? Is it because I experience less of something than someone else? Is it because I have more of something than someone else, right? Is it my own life that kind of starts weaving into these larger systemic issues? Is it because we haven't had much practice talking about it? Is it because they're so charged? Is it because you can only know your life? I don't know anyone else's life, and I can say something that might offend or might land not well on someone else, and we bring a lot of fears. And so I think kind of slowing the conversation down to even begin considering on our own and also as a community, why are we uncomfortable? What makes discomfort the place that we go to first, right? Asking some questions about who does that serve? If I'm uncomfortable and you're uncomfortable, does that serve justice? I don't think so, right? It serves my protection. It serves me from having to stretch, certainly keeps me a little safer, but does that really serve justice? Even in some small ways, we might not even think capital J. I don't know how to do big justice. I can do only small moments of justice in my life, right? But even in a small way, I don't think it leads us to greater justice. And so much of my work is just kind of being with people to help us understand more, with a more nuanced lens where that discomfort comes from, how it lands on our body. These are not just intellectual ideas, right? They're so embodied. We feel it in our gut. We feel it in our throat. We get all hot and flustered. All of that encourages us or discourages us from engaging. And so much of my work is about trying to create some places where we can, with a little bit more gentleness and a little bit more compassion, come together to actually talk about the things that we so desperately need to talk about as a people, as a country, as a community. How will we ever make anything better if I'm just nursing my own discomfort? I don't know how else to kind of bring us together except to actually go through the discomfort together. You can't sidestep it. You can't sidestep it. You have to actually go through the thing that we feel nervous and fearful through to actually come to the other side. And it doesn't mean that you'll never feel uncomfortable again. I feel uncomfortable all the time.
Right.
Work. But it's about managing, you know. I know now, oh, I know you're feeling uncomfortable. You're feeling it in your trapezoids. Yeah. You'll be fine. You'll be fine, baby. I mean, I know that now for myself.
Right.
Whereas earlier I thought, discomfort, let me run away.
Right.
That's how a lot of us are kind of socialized. A lot of us are schooled to run away from discomfort. But I also think that, you know, if we want to talk about people's lives and the lives that are like ours, as well as the lives that are unlike ours, we're going to have to create a little bit more capacity to listen. There are so many stories that are not like mine. So many stories that are not like mine. And I want to really develop my ear and my heart to listen. I can't fix everything. I certainly don't know how to fix everything. But if I kind of move the desire to fix to the side, and if my goal is to be able to listen with an open ear and an open heart, so then my story can merge with some other people's stories, my humanity is enlarged. How could it not be? Your humanity is enlarged, right? We're not just living in small little isolated islands. What does bridging look like between us? And so I think kind of being able to listen with a bit more capacity to one another, that's immense. It sounds like a small act, but it really feels quite immense to me, right? It's the building block for something else, right? How much division, how much hate, how much fear do we have circulating right now? I mean, we always have, but especially right now, it feels like so much. And doing justice with a small j for me is around building that capacity to listen, to be able to hold stories that are not ours, and to be able to also hold our own story. Let me say that too. Many of us are not even used to holding our own story. We feel so much shame. We feel so much disconnection. We feel so much disgust for something that is a part of us. And so how do we, with compassion, hear our own story so we're able to hear other people's stories? That feels key to something different than what we have right now. I have pockets of it. We have pockets of this kind of this idealism that I'm speaking of. And I want to create a little bit more space for that, right? More invitations for us to step in.
I mean, I feel like we could just end it right there because that was so beautiful. Like, but really, it's just really such a different and profound, but also simple way to think about this messy world.
Right.
And I love what you said about how you don't, like, I think as maybe it's my personality, but I think a lot of us travelers who explore and go into different communities with curiosity, we all want to help. We all want to move to how can I fix something? But that's like you share, that's maybe not the first step. The first step is listening and really understanding and being in the space of just feeling the discomfort and listening versus feeling the discomfort and just, okay, let me do this thing that I think is going to help fix something, because maybe that's not the solution. And I think that's it's very counterintuitive, I think, in my brain when I first heard that. But I think it's also so important.
You know, so much of, I think, our desire to fix stems from, of course, good intentions, not knowing what to do with what's in front of us. But it also, I think, is how to say, it's also because we aren't quite sure how to settle ourselves, right? Settling ourselves means dealing with discomfort that's in front of us. Everything in our life can't be fixed.
Right.
Everything in the world can't be fixed. I wish I had that magic wand. Of course, I wish. I wish the world wasn't the way it is in so many ways. Yes, I do. And here it is in front of us. Here's my life, here's your life, here's our communities, here's our world. How do we want to move through it with a bit more anchoredness? What does that anchoredness look like? So I'm not flitting from one idea or one news cycle to another or one thing that happened to another. And I can feel a sense of groundedness with myself, because the more you and I feel that, the more you and I have capacity to hear other people's stories. If I'm so caught up in my own head about my own stuff, I don't have much presence with you. I don't. I won't have much presence with you or any community that I'm interacting with. And so, so much of the being able to listen to other people's stories really starts with learning how to anchor ourselves in a more thoughtful, compassionate, forgiving way, right? It's not about trying to
Hmm.
be perfect. None of
Yeah.
this is about perfection.
Hmm.
It's about just being a bit more expansive to ourselves. Treating ourselves as better friends helps us actually create better communities, I think, right?
Oh, I love that so much. And I think it's very powerful and important, especially for this group that spans the globe, to start thinking about that way, because I feel like the ripple effects, it's, I guess, how do I say this? It's hard to think about, yourself as creating this ripple effect, but it's like, it's you have to go inward first before you can serve
Absolutely.
others. Let's go, fill your cup first before you could fill others. That's why you put your mask on first on the plane, so it all
Absolutely.
kind of resonates so wonderfully.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to transition our conversation a little bit more, because I know, for those of you who aren't aware, I lead Flight, which is the organization when we take students abroad. And we have some of our teachers joining us today, and I know some of them will be listening to this recording. But for teachers, or for those who either formally or informally take facilitation roles during group travel experiences, I know this is a juicy, meaty topic, but what advice would you give people who take on those roles, about how we could create those safe spaces, um, to, as you term in your book, hold space for conversations about these uncomfortable things and topics, and better listen to each other?
Mhm. Let me start by sharing that I think there's a difference between safe space and holding space. Safe space is a term that we hear a lot when we are wanting to dialogue about sensitive things. And I'm not sure that any space can be fully safe for anybody all the time. And so I, as a facilitator and teacher, I never say to groups, this is a safe space. I
Mm,
never say that because I don't know. I don't know people's lives. I don't know their
yeah.
stories. I don't know what's going on for them. And so to be able to say this is safe and then to have things come up for people kind of feels
Mm,
like not a match. And so
right.
I'd rather say and do say to different groups and people, I don't know each other, everyone's story. I don't know what you're all bringing into this space. And in this space, our goal is to be able to hold some spaciousness for us to talk together about things that feel kind of challenging for us. You will feel some stuff come up, sure.
Mhm.
Could you not? Of course you will. But my goal as your facilitator or teacher is to hold that space enough so you feel like you're supported through it, right? That to me feels really different than
Mhm.
saying and claiming or guaranteeing that something is safe. So I
Right.
think when we begin with the concept of holding space, our job as a facilitator shifts, right? It shifts. How do we shepherd people through challenging moments? You do it by slowing things down, right? I'm really slow in my work. My brain is really going fast all the time, but I'm very
Mhm.
slow in my work because I want there to be some space between words, between sentences. If people are, I mean, if we want people to come together a little differently, we're going to have to do things a little differently. We
Yeah.
can't just be like, okay, agenda item one, okay, next thing,
Mhm.
quick, 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 let's go, let's go.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. If I want people to kind of have their nervous system regulated and be able to breathe a little bit deeper so we can listen a little bit more thoughtfully, we're going to have to be a bit more intentional. So I think pacing matters a lot,
Mhm.
not trying to do everything. There's a lot to do in the world. I can't do it all. I don't think
Right.
you can either. So why don't we just try to do this much together, right? To really think about our scope. So pacing, scope matters, to make sure that we've got time, not just about how we speak to one another, but on a trip, for example, when I'm leading programs abroad, the first thing that I do is to make sure that every 2 to 3 days, my group and I has a good 2 to 3 hour chunk of time to speak and debrief and talk through and write together and
Hmm.
process. That's first for me in the planning of a trip. It's less about which sites, although that's important too,
Hmm.
where we're going to go and what we're going to see. It's to anchor the time with these moments where we're able to connect. That matters for trust building. That matters for people to feel like, oh, things are coming up, but I don't have to know exactly what to do with this because tomorrow I know that we have a space to connect about some
Right.
of this. We have kind of natural valves to release some of the stuff that's coming up,
Hmm.
right? So I think that there are some really strategic things that we can do as facilitators, but it's also somewhat intuitive. You got
Right.
to be able to like notice how people are carrying themselves, how things are landing on them,
Hmm.
what what people's silence might mean, what their overenthusiasm might mean.
Right.
Um, all of this is things that I've developed over the years. It's things I never knew at the beginning of what I
Yeah.
do now. But I think as I've just listened and watched and been in a lot of different groups, I'm kind of noticing a little bit more. Our discomfort plays out in a variety of ways,
Yeah.
and holding space for that means not shaming anyone for what they're feeling. Our feelings are just our feelings, but being able to put our feelings in a context so then you don't think the thing that you're feeling means that you're bad or I'm bad. It's just like, oh, yeah, these things come up. How could they not? Look at the world we're in. Of course, we've got contradictory feelings. Of course, we short circuit. Of
Hmm.
course, we don't know what to do all the time. Of course,
Yeah.
to naturalize and normalize some of what's happening in us, I think is like a very important tool for a facilitator, very much so, right? I think it's an
Yeah.
important tool, even if you're not a facilitator and you're just a person in the
Hmm.
world. I think it's a really important tool, right?
That's really helpful. I mean, I think the ability to, like you said, normalize those feelings and to remove the judgment piece. I think all
Right.
of us, I think as innately as humans, we fear being judged this way or
Absolutely.
that way for
Right.
what we feel, what we think, but to be able to, like you said, hold that space so people, whether it's a group you're facilitating or if it's just like you're on a trip with friends,
Yeah.
just know that everything is valid. And I think that's something that I mean, I personally, and I feel like other travelers might feel the same way too, but like, just not sure of how we'll be perceived because of we're feeling a certain thing. But like you said, being able to hold space to make sure everyone knows that those feelings are very
Right.
valid.
And one more thing that comes up as I hear you, Carmela, the, the thing is that when we are with others, I think it's really important to note that people might have different experiences, even
Hmm.
if we're doing the same thing.
Yes.
And that's okay. We don't have to have one homogenous story for everything.
Hmm.
And especially like the more diversity that we have in a group, of course we will have different experiences.
Hmm.
My white students, white participants often have really different experiences of our travel than students of color, travelers of color. I have really different experiences of travel than white colleagues do because of who I am and how I am read and what people assume when they see me and all kinds of things. And that's not my white colleagues' fault, but won't it be nice for my white colleagues to realize that their experience isn't necessarily everyone's experience? And even that really small uh, um, realization can open up some incredible conversations, right? My experience is not everyone's, and your experience is not everyone's. And just that kind of opening creates some space for us to actually like, go a little deeper and say, oh, Carmela, tell me more. When you were there, what was that like for you as who you are in the world? What was that like for me? And how about our other friend who's different than you and I?
Right.
Right? That again, it's just like some small building blocks. It won't solve everything,
Hmm.
certainly, but those small building blocks can actually bridge you and I a little closer together. And isn't that what we're looking for?
Yeah.
Or at least I'm looking for that more and more in our fractured, broken, wounded world. I am looking for more authentic connections with myself, with others, short-term connections, long-term connections. That's gives my life a lot more meaning, and that's what a life well lived for me means, more and more and more, right? So building bridges toward each other means realizing everyone's experience is not ours.
Yes.
That's what the racial reckoning of all last summer was
Hmm.
kind of helping to bring to the surface, right? With Black Lives Matter and so much incredible organizing and protesting around the US and around the country. Oh, that's not my life. Lots
Hmm.
of well intentioned white people were starting to think, right? And while that's really great, what does it take for us to realize that our life is not everyone's life? How much has to happen for us to realize that our life is not everyone's life,
Right.
right?
Yes. So true. And I think, these topics bridge expand beyond not just travel. It's how we live our day-to-day life in the communities that we're born and raised in, the communities we're living in now. And um, I really, what I think is so important that you're emphasizing is the need to just step outside ourselves and
Right.
understand, even in the previous wisdom you shared, how to just understand other people's stories and listen. And I think, we're it's such a skill nowadays, I think, to really see people for who they are and how they experience the world. And I think that's so important, for us as travelers, but then for us as humans. And so
Yeah.
I'm grateful
Right.
to you for sharing that. And so to shift us, I know we were just talking about groups and traveling with a group of people, whether it's students or our friends or colleagues. But a lot of people in our network are not, a good amount are solo travelers,
Mm-hmm.
who just go at it alone and, are just by themselves a lot of the time when they're traveling.
Mm.
So for those solo travelers, can you share maybe some suggestions for processing this discomfort when you're on your own in the moment and maybe don't have someone to talk to, to really share what's happening?
Right. A great idea that I heard recently is to have an accountability buddy back home, somebody who you're close with, who once every 2 days, you send a list of 10 words or phrases that are on your mind. You don't have to do any more explanation. It doesn't have to
Hmm.
be a long post, but just 10 words or phrases that are bubbling up for you from the last couple of days of you solo traveling.
Hmm.
And if I'm your buddy at home, I read it, I receive it, and I witness you,
Hmm.
right? I witness for you. You know that you're being witnessed, and we've got like some template for us for when you come back for us to talk together. I thought that was such a kind of low stakes, like a low bar, easy assignment that we could all do for one another when we're traveling on our own, to be able to talk to others in that kind of small way. I think it's also nice when you're traveling alone. I have found it really helpful as I'm meeting new people to say one or two unexpected things to the people that I'm
Mm.
meeting. Certainly, it's, oh, where are you from? And what are you
Yeah.
doing here? And, all of that usual. But to kind of say, I don't know anyone here. Who should I meet?
Hmm.
That's been a wonderful question for me to ask people. And people are a little taken aback.
Yeah.
Oh, who do you want to meet? Or, those kinds of things. I think solo travel can be such an incredible space for us to not only learn about others, but learn about yourself.
Hmm.
And part of the prepping for solo travel is certainly, kind of safety stuff and logistics, all of that. But I think there's like some inner preparation that we can also do. How do I feel being on my own?
Hmm.
Am I used to that? Have I had opportunities to be on my own and be only in my head? Because usually I hear from my students that they're not used to being on their own. They're not used to being only in their head. They're used to being on their phone.
Hmm.
And to actually be with ourselves, with others, even though there's a lot of other people, you will feel lonely. You will. And do you know how to feel lonely and be okay? Because loneliness is just a feeling. Do we know how to feel that? Can we
Yeah.
do that? And again, it's just muscles that we're exercising. Can we just feel the range of things that we will feel and not have anything kind of kick us in the ass in some way?
Right.
Can we just feel the things and notice what's coming up?
Hmm.
That kind of so-called prep work feels really important to me for any travel.
Hmm.
Those are really life, it's life prep. It's not just about a travel,
Right.
but travel, we know, of course, just really puts a lot of what's happening in life into relief, right? In a more exaggerated way,
Hmm.
right? That's what travel can do. So having some conversation about some of this before we are traveling, I think that would do us some good.
I love that. And again, I mean, I think I'm set on like a broken record, but the advice is so simple, but it's
Mm,
hard. It's hard to find way, or it's hard to prepare yourself to be for being with yourself. It's kind of it's yeah, it's just so it's one of those things where I think it's so easy to forget that. You're thinking about visas and
yeah,
what's the time is the train, but to be able to really mentally prepare for the experience alone or not even of just being
yes,
being in that different place and wrestling with all these things is so important.
yep.
Well, so I have so many questions, but I have two last ones before we open it up to the entire group. Um, there was a story from your travels that you referenced in the book as the helmet to cheek moment. And so for the folks here who haven't read that piece yet, could you share more about that experience and the lessons you took away from it?
Yeah, sure. So much of the work of social justice is finding out the ways that we are socially unjust, right? Social justice is about finding all the ways that we are unequal and unfair, and where people are carrying more than they have to, than they want to, than they should be, and other people are having it easier than they need to. Uh, that's what social justice work is. And I'm in the story that I recount is I'm in India. I have a group of students with me. My students are somewhere else and I'm late. I'm in a rickshaw and I'm in the middle of so much traffic, and all I see around me are things that need to be fixed, potholes and vendors who are being kind of swept away from a formal economy. And, you know, so much of my program there is to kind of learn from human rights activists who are doing some incredible work so we can understand what justice work looks like in different parts of the globe, right? I think that's such an interesting way of understanding our world better. What are some of the issues that people navigate, and how are people trying to make life better for more of us?
Mhm.
And so the things that were wrong were the things that were circulating in my head. And I look over in the middle of this big traffic jam and I see a couple on a scooter next to me. And the husband has a big helmet on, a big plastic helmet. And the wife is behind him sitting without a helmet. And there's a small child in front of them. The child is in a uniform going to school. And in the middle of traffic and smog and pollution and noise, this family next to me, the wife leans over and the husband leans back, and they have this beautiful helmet to cheek moment, her cheek and his helmet. And it was just 4 seconds of a embrace that wasn't even an embrace. It was just a kind of leaning into one another. And it was such a small gesture of love and connection in the midst of traffic, pollution, noise, chaos, I'm late, all of that, that it like just humbled me beyond belief, that small moment. And it made me realize, and it made me think more, there are so many small helmet to moment cheeks everywhere we are, only if we pay attention, only if we're looking. And what a joy and gift to have those moments alongside our work to make life better for more of us. It doesn't mean that you're only trying to quote, smell the roses and not think about all the things that we need to make better. Let's make things better, but also create space within our movements for social justice to appreciate the joy, connection, love, sharing, grace that also is present. The world has lots to fix, but the world is also incredibly rich and joyous. Even for those 4 seconds of beauty, it was there, right? And I shared that scene to a lot of my students, and they felt really moved by it also. And throughout our time, we would challenge each other and invite each other to find as many helmet to cheek moments as we could, right? And so that phrase just became a reminder that even in the midst of a lot of big stuff that isn't working, and a lot of big stuff and a lot of pain, there are these very small, graceful moments that are everywhere that we can tap into and also feel a sense of connectedness. So that matters also, right?
I love that. And it's
I
really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's one of my favorite stories in the book, because it's not just about how do you navigate what's hard, because navigating what's hard also means navigating what is joyous. And some of us, we're not even sure how to do that.
Right.
We're only wired to think about how to navigate what's hard. We aren't sure how to deal with closeness or love or affection or camaraderie, right? We think we're being bad social justice-y people if we connect and want to have that lovely beautifulness. But lovely beautifulness is part of our journey here on earth, right? It's part of it too. I want to incorporate more of that into my life as I do rigorous, thoughtful, strategic work to dismantle racism and other kinds of structures too. I want to do both, right?
Oh, just I was moved, like when I read it in the book, and then I was moved again when you share that story, because it didn't require anything of the people, the family that you're witnessing. It was just you paying attention, and it's such a small thing, but it's I mean I know personally it's so easy to rush and to like be consumed with our day-to-day that it's such a great and beautiful reminder to just be very present. I love that story. So I'm sadly at my last question, which is a bit off topic, but I'm excited to hand it off to the group because I'm sure you all have questions and comments. But my last question, it's a little bit off topic, but I always love hearing from writers and academics about that I admire about works that inspire them. So is there a book or an essay or something you read recently that really moved you?
I read a lot, and I read a lot of incredible things. I can tell you 2 things that I'm reading right now that are right here on my desk. I'm reading this book called Beyond Words, What Animals Think and Feel by Carl Safina, which I'm enjoying immensely. I saw an excerpt of his in something else and ordered this book, and I'm loving it. And another book, very different, The Politics of Trauma, Somatics, Healing, and Social Justice. I'm really enjoying that as well for very different reasons.
Oh, wow.
Those are 2 things. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And those are such, like you said, such different books, but I thank you so much for sharing that. I think well, Erica put it in the chat, but we're all going to add that to our reading list now. So now the time has come. I'm excited to open this up to all of you. We have 30 plus people in the room right now. What questions do you have? Comments for Dr. Anu? I could talk all day, but I want to make sure there's space for all of you to ask your questions. I'm scrolling through the chat now. Okay, question from Nancy. Are the trips that you organize only for your students?
Well, I do a couple of different things. So I do work at the University of Washington for University of Washington students. And I also kind of rent myself out to different organizations and groups that are wanting, I think, a more thoughtful, deep, and intentional experience with their travels. So I have served as a guide and facilitator on different kinds of programs with other tour companies or programs. And I was just telling Carmela that I really love that kind of work. I love taking my students here and there, but I love also being invited into other people's programs to be able to create spaces like we're talking now. So those participants can also kind of feel and be in connection with each other, themselves, and the communities that they're visiting. So I do a range of different things. I sometimes work with groups before they go. I work with groups during their travels. I work with groups when they get back. I do lots of different things. Yeah.
I love it so much. And I know you do a lot, you host and facilitate a lot of other virtual events. So I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I know folks want to follow you or witness your work. You have a website, a website, Instagram, all of those things. So if people want to kind of witness more of your brilliance, they could follow you there as well.
Yeah, you'll find my events, and while I post them on Instagram, I can send. Let me write down in the chat that my what is it called? Handle, right?
Yes, handle. Eliza shared, oh, if you lead a trip open to the public, please let us know. I think there's a lot of folks in this group who would love to travel with you. And I would love to travel with you too. So that's a need that exists. That could be another thing that you do maybe sometime in the future. Any other questions from the group? Okay, a question from Sarah. When you see injustices abroad, how do you not immediately go into quote unquote savior complex or blame the systems that contributed to the injustice?
Good question. I can get mad, I can feel sad, I can feel a range of complex things. But parsing out what we're feeling feels really important, because usually the desire to fix is about masking what we're feeling, right? If I see something that's not right, first of all, am I sure that it's not right? Let me just be clear, right? We have an entire history of Westerners, mostly white folks, coming into Black and brown lands saying, this is a problem, you are a problem, your culture is a problem, your X or Y is a problem. And the local community saying, what are you talking about? This is how we do things, right? So first of all, we need to be really careful of what we quote think is the problem, right? And the lens that we're coming in with. I think our desire to fix can certainly stem from our good intentions and our desire to make or have the world more equal, but it can also stem from our desire to not have to pay attention to all these complex feelings that are coming up, right? There are a lot of things in the world that shouldn't be the way they are, yes. Are you mad? Yes. Do you feel rage? Are you frustrated? Do you not know what to do? Do you feel helpless? All of that is valid. And let's have some spaces where we're able to kind of, again, hold space for those emotions. So my messy and noisy kind of soup of feelings isn't just masked as, let me come and fix, quick, quick. And then when we actually are in collaboration with communities to share resources or to do something better, right? We're going to have to go slow. We're going to have to ask a lot of questions. We're going to have to make sure that the community is leading the plan forward. Right? There's a lot of best practices that are out there when we are collaborating with people who have less than you, when we are collaborating with people where we are a guest in their community. Right? So those are some of the things that come up for me for that question.
Yeah, that's so helpful, because I think it's such a default emotion to, oh, let's fix this thing, but like you reminded us all to take it slow and to listen. I think those are, again, so simple but so important to do, especially when we're trying to quote unquote fix or help or do, with the best of intentions. So we have a former student in the group who wants to say hi. Karina, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Carmela. Hi, Professor. I don't know if you remember me. I took your class, your senior seminar in 2006 at
Oh
the
my
University
God.
of
I,
Washington.
I
Yes,
saw your
when
name.
I was
Your name looked familiar to me, but I couldn't place you. Thanks for saying that. Wow.
yeah, thank you. I actually got to sit in on a talk that you had earlier, which was also connected to TNN, I believe, with Travel Alliance. So that's how I found out about your book. And so I had to ask if I could say hello because your class was very instrumental in my life. I took Professor Taranath's social justice course, and at the time I was thinking about going to law school, and I was thinking about going to sports law, and I had an internship with the Seattle Mariners while also taking your class, and yeah, so I was able to pivot when I did eventually go to law school, and I'm a professor now too. So so yeah, your class was definitely inspirational, and I still remember a book that you assigned. It was called What Night Brings by Carla Trujillo, I believe.
Trujillo.
Yes, and yes, that book was heartbreaking for me, but also really a wonderful read. So, you know, if anyone wants to read it, that was on Professor Tarnath's syllabus. So,
Excellent. Wow.
yeah. So anyways, yes, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for your book. And yeah, it's wonderful to see you.
Wow, thank you. You've just made my week. Thank you so much. What a sweet offering of yours. Thank you so much.
Oh, that makes me so happy. I mean, witnessing your impact is manifold. And it's so, thank you, Karina, for sharing that.
Nice. Thank you.
And I love it. It just makes me, all of this brings me an abundance of joy personally. But Erica has a question in the chat. And I know we're running out of time, but I know we still have room for a couple more questions. So if you folks wanna put it into the chat. So Erica asks, as someone who's written such an important work on a topic on so many travelers' minds, but not written out often, can you share a reaction that a reader of your work has shared with you that has stuck out in your mind?
I love that question. Thank you, Erica. You know, my book is not a traditional academic book. And actually, I think this is why it was rejected from so many publishers, because it was hard to place. Lots of people said, oh, that's a great idea, but it's hard to place. It's not quite a trade book. It's not quite straight up nonfiction. It's not quite academic. You're blurring genres too much for us. And I said, I'm writing it in the way that I have to write it. So please take it or not. It has to be written this way. I can't make it a different way. And for those of you that have read it, there's quite a lot of my own stories of navigating hard moments, not knowing what to do, trying to be better in it. And as I was writing, I wasn't sure if my own stories would resonate with others. And what I am hearing from a wide variety of readers who are not like me in any way, is that they are seeing themselves in my stories in a way that feels really surprising to me. You know, my goal in writing my own stories was to say, see, I'm so-called expert, but I also am just figuring this stuff out. And so if I too am figuring this out, maybe that gives you permission to figure some of this out too. Let's do this together. And that's why I was sharing some of my stories. But I'm hearing people are seeing themselves in those tricky, sticky moments of my own. That feels really wondrous to me. And it makes me, you know, feel even more glad that I do the work I do. I mean, I'm a literature professor. I teach people how to see themselves in other people's stories. And I don't know why I never made that connection that other people might see themselves in my stories. Maybe because it's personal. It's not like, you know, fiction or literature. It's just my own story. So seeing them make those links has felt like kind of so amazing. So that's what comes up, Erica, when I think of your question.
That's wonderful. And I think it's a testament to Dr. Anu. When we first spoke, like I'm sharing with all of you, like I felt so moved. Like I was just like, I kind of like had emotion in my face. Like I'm a crier by nature. And it was just one of those things that I felt, because I was like, it's, you know, to be seen is a very like wonderful thing. Look, it's happening now. But I think that's why so many people resonate with your work, because the stories are vulnerable and they're real. And I think all of us have similar stories as well. Okay, I know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, let me just say one more thing.
Yeah.
And another thing I keep hearing from people, I hear this from white people, from white readers. I want to learn about race and power and identity, but I'm so scared of being shamed for being white, because white means something different in the world than being a person of color.
Mhm.
And I really appreciate the gentle invitation that your book offers to grapple. So I hear that a lot from white readers. I've also heard from readers of color. I'm so glad to see a woman of color write about race and power and identity without apology, and
Mhm.
to see our Black and brownness in your book uh, feels like home. I've heard, right? And so kind of again, we come to the book, we come to anything based on our own lens, based on who we are. And so to hear those different responses from readers, I didn't know that would happen, but how wonderful to hear that.
Oh, that is so wonderful. And okay, we're almost out of time, but I know we have 2 questions and I want to get to them because they're
Sure.
such great questions.
Yes.
Caroline asks, oh, sorry, no, yes, Caroline asks, how can we better spread the ideas you share in your book and what you share today? This is in my heart, but it feels as if so many don't get it. So thoughts on that?
Great question. Well, I'm learning that you can't change anyone. I mean, I would love to. I got a lot of people to fix and change, and I can't do anything. I can only invite myself into deeper conversations and reflections. And in so doing, my example might encourage others to invite themselves into deeper reflection and conversations.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I do a lot of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, racial equity facilitation and consulting. I'm in a lot of different institutions and spaces. And even in that role, I can't make anyone do or think anything. I can provide some spaces where we can plug in. I can hold space for us to plug in, but I can't change anybody. And so, Caroline, I wonder if that's kind of, maybe that's part of it. Knowing that we can't change anyone, we can invite people into conversation, right? I know that people have been using this book as a book club, have been using it as a like all staff common book, or in that way, like to, you know, every 2 weeks to have a chapter that people come during lunch and discuss together. So to create spaces where we can come together, low stakes spaces to come and talk together, that can be an invitation, right? But we can't change anyone. Yeah.
That's such a helpful reminder. Her follow-up, Caroline's follow-up question is, would you ever consider training the trainers as you have in your classes, Karina being an example?
Oh, I do lots of that kind of work. Yes, yes. I do lots of train the trainer work. I work with educators. I work with a lot of different kinds of folks. So if you've got some idea in mind, let's chat. Yeah, please. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so wonderful. Well, look at this. We are perfectly at time. I know I myself could ask tons of questions. I know you probably all have some brewing or might in the future, but I know Erica and Dr. Anu put her contact information in the chat. And so this is not the beginning, this is an end. And for all of those of you who have not read her book. It is wonderful, and I cannot recommend it enough. It goes way deeper than we went today, and so I invite all of you, if you haven't read it, to order it right now. It's wonderful, something to keep within arm's length, whether you're traveling or not. And so what else Erica, what else do I have to say? Oh, first, thank you, Dr. Anu, for being here. This is wonderful, life-giving for me, but I know for all of us here present.